In this video, we're going to write algebraic formulas for functions defined by a verbal description. In this first example, it states, suppose that f is the function that computes how many feet are in m miles. And we're then asked to find what f of m equals, and then finally evaluate f of 2.5 and interpret that result. So as we look at this, we're going to have the function's name is going to be f, we're told that, and it's going to take miles and convert them to the equivalent number of feet. So I've written here f colon m arrow to miles. That's a more abstract way of denoting function notation, but it's helpful for us to see which direction this function is going. It's taking miles and turning them into feet. We're also given in this problem a hint that 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. If we weren't given that hint and we didn't know, we'd simply have to look it up. So let's look for this pattern. If we have the number of miles and we need to know how many feet, we need to find the pattern so that we can define this algebraically. So thinking about 1 mile equaling 5,280 feet, now let's take 2 miles. 2 miles would then be that same 5,280 feet times 2. And 3 miles would be that 5,280 feet times 3. And so if we wanted m miles, if we continue that pattern, we'd take that 5,280 feet times m. So at this point, we've pretty well established the pattern. If we want to take miles and turn it into feet, we need to multiply by 5,280. Note that with f of m, we're not going to include the units in the way that this function is defined. So we'll have f of m equal 5,280 times m. Now, the units on the input are miles, and the units on the output are feet, and that's based on how the function is defined. So we can take the number of miles, multiply it by 5,280, and that gives us the number of feet. So let's evaluate f of 2.5 using this formula, and then we'll interpret that result with those appropriate units. So if we have f of 2.5, we know that this function takes that input and multiplies it by 5,280. So we'll have 5,280 times 2.5. And using a calculator multiply this out, we'll find that this is then equal to 13,200. So to interpret this result, our input was 2.5, our output was 13,200, and we knew that that input was number of miles. So we can say there are 13,200 feet in 2.5 miles. Now let's move on to the second example. This next example says, suppose that m is the function that computes how many yards are in x feet. We're then asked to find the formula for m of x and evaluate m of 24 and interpret that result. So to get started, let's do that kind of formal function mapping real quick. I'm going to write m colon, and it takes feet and converts it. I'm going to write an arrow now, so feet arrow to yards. It converts it to yards. And here I have x feet. As a hint, I'm given that 1 yard equals 3 feet, and again, if I didn't know that, I'd simply have to look it up. So let's look into developing that pattern. We know, and we're going to start with feet, so I'm going to put feet on the left. 3 feet, that's equal to 1 yard. Now I could go to 4 feet, but that's going to be a harder pattern. I'm going to jump up to 6 feet, and I know that 6 feet then is equal to 2 yards. And 9 feet is equal to 3 yards. And if I'm looking at what's happening here, I'm taking the number of feet and multiplying it by 1/3 in that case. Or, and I'll show a second approach. So take the number of feet and multiply by 1/3. Or I could take the number of feet and simply divide by 3. So writing this formula, I'll actually show each of these. So m of x, we could write this then as 1/3 x. Or we could write m of x as x over 3. And just based on the rules of fractions, we know that those are equivalent. They look slightly different though. So those are both appropriate ways to represent this function algebraically. So now let's evaluate m of 24 and interpret the result. And we'll only need to do this for one of those representations. So let's take m of 24. And when we evaluate this, we will replace x with 24. So I'll take 1/3 times 24. And I know that 1/3 times 24 is then 8. So when I interpret this result, I can say then, I know that the input was feet and the output was yards. So there are 8 yards in 24 feet.